Stunning news out of San Francisco. The illegal immigrant accused of killing Kate Steinle found not guilty.
This really is, I think, a damning indictment of so-called San Francisco values.
His attorney said it was a message for President Trump. He just tweeted a response to the verdict, quote, a disgraceful verdict in the Kate Steinle case.
If this doesn't change the debate, nothing will.
Just hours from now, President Trump's landmark tax bill could face a final vote.
I believe we're going to get it done.
That news sent stocks surging on the tax cut hopes. The Dow passed the 24,000 mark for the first time.
Congressman Conyers should resign. John Conyers is an icon in our country.
Matt Lauer reportedly demanding a $30 million payday despite being fired over sexual misconduct allegations.
3, 2, 1. Have a good time.
Right to a Fox News alert now. In case you went to bed, I have some news and most likely will be very disturbing to you this morning. An illegal immigrant found not guilty in the death of Kate Steinle.
A San Francisco jury clearing Jose Garcia Zarate of murder and manslaughter in the sanctuary city of San Francisco.
William LaJeunesse is live in Los Angeles with the details on the verdict that is shocking our country. William?
Well, remember, virtually all the information that made this case so infamous, that angered so many Americans, the jury never heard that Jose Garcia Zarate was an illegal immigrant, 7-time felon, deported 5 times, and the only reason he was on the pier that day is because the city of San Francisco chose, as a sanctuary city, to protect him from deportation. Now, the jury acquitted Zarate of first and second-degree murder and the charge that many thought he would be found guilty, manslaughter. They let him off on that as well. The defense had argued that Zarate had found this gun wrapped in a towel, picked it up, and the weapon accidentally fired. No intent, no motive.
The physical evidence has always supported the finding that this was an accidental occurrence, and I think the jury came to that conclusion.
Now, prosecutors said Zarate deliberately fired into the crowd, admitted firing the gun, threw it in the bay, and then ran from the scene. Jurors, after deliberating 6 days, inspected the gun last night. They felt the trigger themselves and then rendered their verdict. Now, the Steinle family said they are shocked and saddened by the verdict. The ICE director, Tom Homan, released this statement. It is unconscionable that politicians across this country continue to endanger the lives of Americans with sanctuary policies while ignoring the harm inflicted on their constituents. Now, the jury did find him guilty of a felony possession of a gun as a felon. He would likely get about a 2-year sentence. He may get time served, and ICE said he will be deported. Back to you.
All right. Hey, William, so just to be clear, the jury was never told he was in the country illegally and were not told that he was a 7-time felon?
That's correct. That information was not presented to the jury. He was just another guy who found this gun under the bench, and it accidentally fired. There was a lot of talk about the trigger pull of this particular weapon, that it may have been altered, if you will. As you know, it belonged to a federal agent. But at this point in time, that's what the jury said. One of the jurors said last night he's not ready to speak now. Maybe we'll hear from them today.
Now, William, when we interviewed the family right after this happened 2 years ago, we were told that the gun went off. The guy fired the gun 3 times. Is that the case? I mean, how could that be an accident?
Well, what they're saying is because it ricocheted, the bullet that struck Kate ricocheted about, well, went 12 feet, and then it hit the cement, and then it went up again and hit her. So that is why the defense argued, listen, there's no intent here, that it just went off.
Okay, so 1 shot, not 3.
William, thank you very much. Also, remember in the very beginning, and he perfectly sets what the jury found out during the course of the trial, was in the beginning, this illegal said, yeah, I had the gun and I was trying to kill the SEALs. So that explains he was trying to kill the SEALs, but then the defense was so effective in saying, look, it wasn't his gun, he didn't take it there, it ricocheted, and she's dead. It's terrible.
Meanwhile, Michelle Malkin was on primetime last night. Listen.
This really is, I think, a damning indictment of so-called San Francisco values. Where is Nancy Pelosi tonight? Where has she been for the last 25 years? This is her city, and it is her open borders policies that have haunted so many innocent people and innocent lives in San Francisco. And it is the conversion of America into a sanctuary nation instead of a sovereign nation that has endangered us, and it is one of the primary reasons that President Trump was elected in the first place. When will the city and county sheriff in San Francisco and that mayor and the governor ever be held accountable for the deaths as a result of bloody open borders?
Deputy Director Tom Homan says this entire tragedy could have been prevented if San Francisco had turned the alien over to ICE as we requested instead of releasing him back into the streets. It's unconscionable that politicians across the country continue to endanger lives of Americans with sanctuary policies.
The sanctuary city issue. Many are saying the sanctuary city is what killed Kate Steinle. They protect the illegals, the illegal criminals. This guy had 7 felons, deported 5 times, protecting him over this innocent young lady who had her whole life ahead of her. There she is, 32 years old when she died. She was in medical device sales. She sold for Medtronic, which means she sold pacemakers, which means she saved lives in the operating room. She was in love with a young lawyer at the time of her death, and she was planning on marrying him.
Okay, so the public defender made the case that it wasn't his gun, went off accidentally, even though we'd heard another story from him personally. And then as soon as the verdict was read, Matt Gonzalez, who was his lawyer, and he went out to the cameras, and he essentially politicized the verdict and took a shot at the President of the United States.
For those who might criticize this verdict, there are a number of people that have commented on this case in the last couple of years. The Attorney General of the United States, the President and Vice President of the United States. Let me just remind them that they are themselves under investigation by a special prosecutor in Washington, D.C., and they may themselves soon avail themselves of the presumption of innocence and the beyond a reasonable doubt standard. And so I would ask them to reflect on that before they comment or disparage the result in this case.
Okay, Plato, thanks for the great advice. Meanwhile, the president and vice president are not under investigation. There's an ongoing investigation about a Russian effect on our election. But I think it's also important to point out the president was relatively measured compared to what I thought he was going to be. And not that you can blame him. He's always talked about this instinctively and heartfully. He said this last night, a disgraceful verdict in the Kate Steinle case. He just tweeted this, no wonder the people of our country are so angry with illegal immigration.
Right, he tweeted that last night. Just 2 minutes ago, he tweeted this. The Kate Steinle killer came back and back over the weakly protected Obama border, always committing crimes and being violent. And yet, this information was not used in court. His exoneration is a complete travesty of justice. Build the wall.
Well, he was up first-degree murder, not guilty. Second-degree murder, not guilty. Involuntary manslaughter, meaning he didn't mean to do it, not guilty. Assault with a semi-automatic weapon, not guilty. The only thing he was found guilty of is possessing a firearm by a felon, which means it seems like to me they would know he's a felon if they convicted him of possessing a firearm by a felon.
What's also interesting, and there you can see all those not guilties, what's interesting is I was reading one of the San Francisco papers this morning, and they essentially said that San Francisco may have violated their own law because apparently in 1992 they put in an amendment that excludes protections for illegals who are in this country without papers who have committed a felony. So this guy should not have wound up, having the sheriff allow him to skate after he was released on that pot charge.
So he might be deported, and he could get up to 3 years still. Meanwhile,
and the DOJ is going to investigate, it sounds like.
Kellyanne Conway is going to be with us at 8 o'clock talking about this, as well as the latest drama with tax reform.
Now, back in 2015, she died on July 1st. We got to sit down with the family to talk to them and find out how they were feeling about everything that had gone down or had happened to their daughter. This was 3 weeks after their daughter was killed.
What did I know you said what she said to you. What did you say to her during those moments?
Oh, just hang in there, Kate. Keep breathing. I cradled her head. There wasn't much to do. I just kept talking to her and listened to her breathe, and she was, breathing fairly normally. And When she didn't, then I would start mouth to mouth. But yeah, it was just a horrific day.
Is there any peace that you can find in knowing you were with her when she took her last breath?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm glad it was there. You know, it could have been a car wreck. It could have been somewhere else.
Listening to Sanchez talk about how he found this gun that was wrapped up in a T-shirt and he accidentally shot 3 times, and then you look at his rap sheet, what's your message for him today? What was your reaction to what he said?
We have no reaction to him whatsoever. Our faith is strong, and there's no room in our hearts for a thought of that person. Our faith is strong. I don't know at this point in time if it's that strong as of yet. Faith is a work in process and progress, and not going to forgive him as of yet, no.
That's Kate's dad, Jim, next to her, Kate's mom, Elizabeth, and then the brother was in the back sitting next to his wife. I was pregnant with my little girl at the time, so of course I was thinking about what a parent's reaction would be if I were in that situation. The brother, Kate's brother, his wife was pregnant at the same time, pregnant with a little girl, and I asked them, what are they going to name the child? Are they going to name her Kate? And they said they were going to use Catherine as the middle name. Yeah. Reese Catherine is what they wanted to name their little girl.
And they were down in Washington to help push for Kate Steinle legislation. Kate's law was eventually passed by the U.S. House. It is now waiting for the U.S. Senate to take it up.
And that says any illegal alien convicted of a felon who comes back into our country after they've been deported would serve 5 years the first time in federal prison, no ifs, ands, or buts, and then if it's a second offense, they will serve 10 years.
Meanwhile, the president is in support of it, too. 11 minutes after the hour. Hey, Jillian.
Good morning, guys. Definitely tough news for a lot of people this morning, and we do have some more news to get to. So let's start with this story. President Trump's landmark tax bill could face a final vote today. Senate Republicans working around the clock to win over all the holdouts. A previously undecided Senator, Montana Steve Daines, joined us earlier with why he's now voting yes.
And the outcome here is going to be able for American business to win. It creates more jobs. It will raise wages. So this tax plan is going to put more dollars directly in the pockets of hardworking Americans through lower taxes, but it's going to increase wages.
The president wants to sign the final tax bill by Christmas. Disgraced Today Show host Matt Lauer reportedly wants a $30 million payday. According to Page 6, his lawyers want NBC to pay out the remainder of his contract after they fired him over sexual misconduct allegations. These DailyMail.com photos showing Lauer for the first time since the scandal broke, leaving his home in the Hamptons to meet with a lawyer. Lauer could have as many as 8 victims. He has apologized, saying some of what's being said is true. It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas in the Capitol. President Trump lighting the national Christmas tree.
2, 1.
The president's extended family also joining in the moment. So pretty. It's that time of season, the Christmas tree lighting.
And today's December 1st.
Yes, it is.
It is. Advent calendars.
Oh, yes.
The Advent, we did the Advent wreath. Did y'all do the wreath? Yeah.
I know.
But no, you know the calendars, you pull back the door every single day and the chocolate's behind it. You can start it today.
Yahoo. All right. Thank you very much for joining us on this Friday. Coming up, more reaction to the shocking verdict of Kate Steinle's killer cleared of her murder. Our next guest, her son was killed by an illegal. She's going to join us to react to the verdict next.
And first, he was GQ Citizen of the Year. Now, Anthem kneeling Colin Kaepernick has got a new award. Thanks, Sports Illustrated.
A Fox News alert, the shocking acquittal of an illegal immigrant in the murder of Kate Steinle hits close to home for our next guest, whose 18-year-old son, Joshua, was murdered by an illegal in 2010.
Laura Wilkerson joins us now with her reaction to the verdict that we found out last night or yesterday afternoon. Laura, what was your reaction? Laura, can you hear me?
Yeah, it doesn't look like the audio's working out.
I think we were having a little audio problem.
I can. Oh, there we go.
Can you hear us now, Laura? We are having an audio problem. I tell you what, we're going to take a quick time out, fix that, and you'll hear from her in just a moment. Plus,
Laura Wilkerson joins us now with her reaction to the verdict. As you know, we were just introducing her. She lost her son, Joshua. He was 18 years old at the hands of an illegal immigrant who is behind bars now. Laura, what was your reaction yesterday? I'm sure you were thinking about the Steinle family.
Yes, my prayers go out to them. This is such a hard time for them. I was just sickened by the verdict. It just seems like such a travesty and such a mockery of the justice system. I believe that the jury should have heard that he, had 7 felonies and then he had been deported 5 times. Those are rights that are given to American citizens, and then they shouldn't apply to people who are in this country illegally, and I'm devastated for them.
You think you got justice because you were in Texas?
Pardon?
Did you think you got justice because you were in Texas and not in San Francisco?
Well, I'm sure that it helped to be in Texas. Kate Steinle would be alive today had they honored the detainer that immigration put on him. There's no question about it. I mean, I had Nancy Pelosi tell me that all of her illegals in her area were law-abiding citizens, which is a flat lie. They're not citizens to begin with, let alone law-abiding.
Sure. Of course, that's with the sanctuary cities. But then again, he should not have been in this country at all. But during the last administration in particular, we saw a relaxation of a lot of the border protections.
That's exactly right. He shouldn't have been here. And so what's he going to get now? Time served, and then he'll get deported? Wow, I don't think that's deterred him the first 5 times. Mm-hmm. He'll be right back. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
He knows how to do it,
I'm so tired of... Exactly. It doesn't seem to be too hard for him to do it 5 times. It just amazes me. I'm kind of sick of hearing about the wall's going to be built and we're going to stop the funding for sanctuary cities. No, we've sent them a letter for stopping the funding. Do it today. How many more American citizens have to die? And there will be some today, whether you hear about them or not. It's absurd, and my heart is just broken for our country and for the Steinle family.
So your son dies brutally at the hands of an illegal immigrant. What is it like for to go through the trial for a family member? And what do the Steinles go through?
That trial is devastating to sit through because you hear, so many things that you didn't know. It's basically their case until you sit there and listen to it. I never heard the word torture and stuff before I sat through trial. It absolutely takes everything you've got to do it. And then when you go home, it was the loneliest time in our family's life. And that was with our killer convicted. I can't imagine what she feels like today. It's like someone just punched them again in the stomach. And it's our government and our judicial system that did it. It's, I can't imagine.
Laura, what do you make of, right after the verdict was read at the courtroom in San Francisco, the public defender, Matt Gonzalez, who acted as this man's defense attorney, came out and took a shot at the President of the United States?
Yeah, I think that was absurd. I swear I wanted to hit him, actually. It was absurd, and I think that's his 10 minutes of fame. Why didn't he just have the dignity to come out and say, you know what, nobody wins today. Everybody loses. This guy's a killer, and the Kate Steinle family will forever be changed because they've lost their daughter. Decency at best, but to make it political just means he needed 10 minutes of fame. I don't have... My stomach's just sick about him.
Laura, I know you were with the president a lot on the campaign trail, and a lot of other angel moms were. Tell us what happened to your son, for the folks at home that don't know, and what happened to his killer.
Joshua was giving a kid a ride home from school, and the kid intended to murder him, we believe, for his truck to sell or scrap for money. And what he did was he beat Josh in the head with a closet rod until it broke in 4 pieces. He kicked him so hard in the stomach that his spleen was sliced into. It was painful. It was torture for the medical examiner. He strangled him, let him go, strangled him over and over again until he watched him die. The kid said this from the stand. He watched him die, and then he took him and put him in Joshua's truck, drove around and bought gas, laid him in a field, and set him on fire. He did get life sentence in Texas. That means 30 years before he's up for parole. It just was the 7th year, so he's got 23 years to go before he's up for parole. And what about the deportation? I hope to be alive and standing there to make sure he's deported. But we have some families that are coming up here shortly. Their kids' killers are getting out. And, for them, it's devastating to know that they're going to get out and come right back in. It's time to stop it.
How do you live your life? How do you go on after something like this happens to your child?
God, Jesus is the only way I've been able to make it. And I don't know how people that don't have Jesus in their life get through it. I heard your thing about Kate Steinle's father saying that it was his faith, and I'll tell you what, I just could not have survived without him. And you know, nothing's bringing Joshua back, but it's taken 7 years to process it and get your head around it. And but yeah, there's no other way. I mean, Jesus carried me through the whole thing.
It is such a terrible story. Laura, you know that Kate's Law did pass the U.S. House. They're just waiting for them to act on it in the U.S. Senate. And then obviously the President of the United States would sign it. But for any senators watching right now, Democrats, Republicans, what's your message? Why should they pass Kate's Law?
Because, I mean, think about if it happened to your kid. I mean, if it happened to your kid, you can, you know, tear up, but the next 5 minutes you can change the channel of that grief and go on about your day. You know, this is something that lives with us forever and ever and ever. Our life is not the same on this earth. It's just absolutely, they don't understand the pain. They want to look away and not face it. It was an accident. Who cares? This was the violent felon who'd been deported, you know, accident or not. I don't think that I'm going to leave here today and, oh, I found a gun on our bench and just took a practice shot and killed somebody and get off with it. I mean,
the
it's
law
absurd.
definitely let them down. It was preventable.
Yeah. It is.
All right. Laura Wilkerson, thank you very much for retelling your story and your reaction this morning.
God bless you, Laura.
Thank you.
All right.
Coming up next, Dan Bongino's reacting to Kate Steinle's verdict.
I think you can imagine what that is. And what does the Republican tax plan mean for you? Some big changes, it sounds like, overnight. And that is next. Well, President Trump's landmark tax bill could face a final vote today. Senate Republicans working around the clock to win over all the holdouts as you look at Capitol Hill. Meanwhile, from the beginning, Democrats raised concerns about the Republican tax cut bill.
The GOP tax scam raises taxes on 82 million middle-class families. The SALT eliminates the state and local tax deduction and blows a hole in the state and local budgets across America. It will unravel the ACA, its sneaky ACA reform repeal, and with all of that, increases the national debt by over $2 trillion.
But are these concerns justified or just Democratic hyperbole?
All right, here to debunk all of this, perhaps, is Mythbuster herself, tax attorney and former legal advisor to the chief counsel at IRS, Rosemary Becky. Rosemary, welcome.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
First off, we hear about the deficit, and we hear that it's going to add $1 trillion to the deficit.
That's just completely false. There is so much in this bill that will generate an economic growth, and that economic growth will put us on a path to fiscal responsibility. So there's a lot to be in this bill for everybody.
To chew on, and that's why we're looking at it. We just heard from Nancy Pelosi. She called it a scam. What about the fact that so many Democrats, Rosemary, have said it's going to be a tax hike on the middle class?
And that's just not true. This bill will give benefits to both the low, middle, and high income earners. It provides tax cuts straight across the board.
She also said health care tax hike. Is that going to happen?
No, not at all. What the bill includes is the repeal of the mandate. And if you recall, the mandate is simply a penalty for not purchasing health care. All it does is eliminate that penalty. That's not
so
a tax.
It saves people money if they don't want to do it.
Exactly.
Right, and it does say disproportionately it hurts people who make $50,000 and less because they are the ones who have to make the decision. Do I pay the fine on the mandate for health care?
Correct.
Or do I actually buy a plan, which sadly, the Obamacare plans are not what they promised. The high premiums, high deductibles. Therefore, these people are in a conundrum. This would help them.
That's absolutely correct.
Right. Moving on to just what I said before about the deficit. It would add $1 trillion to the deficit if you don't factor in the fact that the economy is supposed to grow, bringing in additional revenue called dynamic scoring. If you feel as though the economy is going to stay the same, it would blow a hole. But if you're betting that it's going to grow, it would actually reduce the deficit.
Right, that's right. This bill will put more money into the pockets of both Americans as well as businesses, and people will reinvest that money. And as a result of that reinvestment, we will have economic growth, and economic growth will generate more taxes.
Now, what about the wealthy? Because when the president was running, he said, I'm going to decrease taxes for everybody. He said in a press conference yesterday or the day before that he said, I'm going to pay the penalty. I'm going to pay more in taxes because I'm one of the wealthy.
Right. Most Americans, most wealthy Americans pay the most taxes in this country.
That's the way it is now, right?
Exactly. That's how it is. So as a result, these tax cuts will disproportionately help upper income taxpayers. I mean, that's just the reality. But what this tax bill does, it cuts at all levels. It cuts at the high income earners as well as middle and low class taxpayers as well.
Well, it hit a logjam last night. They're trying to work out the details this morning. There could be a vote later today.
And Steve, what you're saying is, just to expand on that, it's because of the trigger mechanism, right?
Well,
and the parliamentary, in a procedure move, you're not allowed to trigger in automatic tax increases if the deficit is not, if the deficit begins to grow. Corker and company and Flake wanted to add a provision in that would up the taxes on people.
Right, but the
and
parliamentarian
reduce the
said you can't do that in this kind of bill. The problem is because the non-political scoring committee that came back with a number yesterday that said that the scorekeeper said it would add $1 trillion over 10 years to the deficit, and so Bob Corker said, well, I can't go along with that. So what they're talking about doing is making the cut smaller. And so it's going to start at 20% for corporations, but then it's going to slowly go up. And there are a bunch of Republicans who are going, wait a minute.
Wall Street won't like that.
Yeah. Wall Street Journal doesn't like it this morning. Anyway, we'll see as they take up a vote maybe later today. Rosemary, once again, thank you very much.
Well, thank you for having me.
All right. Meanwhile, 24 minutes before the top of the hour.
And let's hand it over to Jillian. Hey, Jillian.
Hey, guys. Good morning to you. Good morning to you at home as well. Let's get you caught up on some headlines. The House's top Democrat, Nancy Pelosi, putting more pressure on John Conyers to bow out. But the congressman's lawyer is firing back, saying that's not her call.
It is not up to Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi did not elect the congressman, and she sure as hell won't be the one to tell the congressman to leave.
The embattled Democrat is now hospitalized for a stress-related illness as calls for his resignation grow. The 88-year-old and longest-serving member of Congress is accused of harassing female staffers and settling a lawsuit with taxpayer money. Pilots stepping up to help fix the American Airlines glitch that could have caused complete chaos this holiday season. The company says only a few hundred flights remain understaffed, a much smaller number than the 15,000 trips originally in jeopardy. A computer glitch let pilots take vacation at the same time, creating a massive scheduling problem at the end of December. Pilots now aware of the issue, signing up to captain those flights. Well, despite not having played all season long, Colin Kaepernick's kneeling protests have earned him yet another honor. Sports Illustrated giving the former quarterback the Muhammad Ali Legacy Award. The protests he started still underway in the NFL. All players standing for the national anthem for Thursday Night Football. Cowboys defensive tackle David Irving raising his fist at the end. The Cowboys dominating the Washington Redskins for a 38-14 win. Have you ever been hangry? That's when you're so hungry, you become angry.
Sandy gets her crying, and she's hungry.
You're a little hangry, Claire.
I'm not hangry, Tito.
Hungry and angry? You're hangry, Claire.
A new poll by Snickers finding New Yorkers are the hangriest people in America, with food sparking bad moods at least 7 times a month. California and Florida round out the top 3. Wisconsin, Delaware, and Montana are the least hangry states. I don't know about you guys, but this term has been widely used in my household for years. We're all hangry.
Well, there you go. And now we know that Wisconsin, the dairy state, not hangry at all. The least hangry. Right. All right. Thank you.
I wonder why New York is the hangriest.
There's a lot of tension in this town.
We're all too busy to eat.
Too many people. One out of every 5 people has to leave.
And the lines are so long for the food carts.
The streets are too crowded, so are the subways.
Why don't you go outside and just tell people they have to leave? 1 out of 5?
1, 2, 3, 4, go. 1, 2, 3, 4, go.
All 3 of us are very hangry this morning.
Who knew?
All right, we have on a serious note, a Fox News alert. Shock and disgust spreading across our country After the illegal immigrant accused of killing that young lady right there, Kate Steinle, is found not guilty of her murder. How could that happen, many are asking? Dan Bongino joins us live to react next.
And bias against conservatives in the classroom. A daughter spotted a big problem with one of her assignments. Her mother says it's indoctrinating kids straight into liberalism. That's what the mom